Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Melissa and I am currently pregnant with my third baby, and I am in my third trimester at 35 weeks pregnant, so getting there, almost a mom of 3. And if you are new, then hit the subscribe button if you're interested in motherhood, wellness, pregnancy kind of stuff, and vlogs. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you my birth stories for my first 2 pregnancies. If you don't know, I am planning to have a home birth with a third baby. And so the first 2 births were in a hospital, and they were both like the complete opposite in a way. I would like to share these stories with you guys so that you can maybe learn something from it, take something from it, and take some advice that I can give you for your hospital birth, whether you want to do it natural or not. At the end of this video, I'm also going to share some tips for having a natural birth at a hospital, which, you know, you kind of have to go out of your way in a way to really accomplish that if that's what you want to do. So if you see me looking down, it's because I have notes here. So I got pregnant for the first time when I was 19 years old. One thing that I did during that first pregnancy is I researched a lot. Like, I was a huge blog reader, so I would just research. I wanted to know what was going on, what was happening, how the baby was growing. Like, I was just so interested. I've always been interested in the whole birthing and labor and delivery. I don't think I researched enough to really fully understand the bigger picture. However, I still came to the conclusion that having a not so much natural birth was the right way to go. At that point, I was just thinking epidurals don't seem natural to me. I don't want to do the epidural because I know I've heard there's side effects that come from the epidural. But see, I wasn't thinking about like having a natural birth where I do certain things during labor or I avoid Pitocin. I was just thinking I don't want an epidural. You kind of have to have the whole mindset of it and understand the bigger picture in order to not get to the epidural part, which is something that I don't think I understood at that point completely. I ended up going into labor at 41 weeks and 2 days. So it was a very long week because I felt like I was never gonna have the baby, but finally at 41 weeks and 2 days, I started going into labor. I remember I started feeling, you know, contraction pains like in the middle of the day. My husband and I decided to go take a walk around the store, like do some like retail therapy, although I didn't really feel like shopping. We just went just so that we can get some walking done. This was like after dinner time. And so we were walking around, and I do remember during the walking inside the store, I was feeling a lot of pain. I had to sit down sometimes because it was getting really strong. So then we went back home after a while, and then we decided to head to the hospital. So I think we headed to the hospital around 11 p.m. by the time like we got our bags loaded in the car and all of that. So when we got to the hospital, I was in the triage. After they checked me, they told me that I needed to walk around for a few more hours in the hospital before they can admit me and give me a labor room. I think they told us to walk around till 2 a.m., which to me felt like crazy because I was like, I don't know, that's a lot of hours of just walking around. It was just very exhausting. We ended up just walking around the hallways, the lonely, empty hallways, and I kept feeling like I needed to go to the bathroom, if you know what I mean. So we would stop along the way, like in the hallways, and I told my husband that I felt like I had to go, so then I would try to go, but I couldn't really go at the same time. So it was just like an uncomfortable feeling because you're having contractions, but then you also feel like you have to go to the bathroom, and it's just like you just want to relieve the bathroom one so that you can focus on the contractions. So I do remember that being like an issue for me, like it was like an annoying thing. But for some reason I just couldn't go. I don't know if it's because I wasn't relaxed or because I wasn't comfortable. Eventually they admitted me. They ended up giving me a room. And then after a while, I'm not sure how soon after, I can't remember, but they ended up suggesting that I get on some Pitocin to just jump things and get things moving. And so I just let them do what they suggested should be done. So they started giving me Pitocin. And if you don't know, Pitocin is the medicine that they give you to jumpstart and progress your labor. But the only issue with that, well, not the only, but one of the issues with that is that it can create labor pains and contractions that are not natural, and the contractions go at a pace that is unnatural to your body, so it becomes like very, very hard to deal with because that's just not normally how your body would contract and how closely together and strongly together the contractions would be. I think they started me off like on a lower dose, but then like little by little they would pick it up. And I do remember that I was in the bed the entire time. Once they admitted me to the labor and delivery room, I was literally in the bed the whole time. You know, the pain was getting stronger and stronger, and I was like, every time they would ask me if I was interested in getting an epidural, I would say, no, I'm okay, I'm fine. And then it got to the point where, you know, things were progressing, and then a nurse walked in and she said, are you sure you don't want the epidural? And I said, no, I'm not planning to have it. And then she said, well, how bad is your pain? Because it's going to get a lot worse. And then once it gets worse, you can't get the epidural anymore. So that really scared me, and it kind of made me feel like I should get the epidural because, you know, she's experienced being a nurse with many women giving birth. So it was kind of like, okay, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I should listen to her. She probably knows better. So I ended up kind of being scared by that, but she wasn't really giving me like an affirmation that, you know, it's gonna be okay, you can get through it, you know what I mean? And then I didn't mention this earlier, but it was just me, my husband, and I in the room. Like, I didn't want anybody in there. I just kind of wanted to do it like on my own and just experience it with my husband. I remember when the nurse walked away to give us some time to think about it, my husband was like, don't do it. Like, you know, you said you didn't want to do the epidural, so you'll be fine, you got this. I felt like I couldn't trust his word or believe him because he's a male and he's never going to go through birth, and he just won't understand. So I kind of just felt like he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, I got to look out for myself right now. I'm scared. This nurse is telling me to do, like, you know, she's telling me it's gonna get really bad and I should get it or else it's too late, and that just scared me. So then I was kind of telling him like, I know, but I'm the one going through this. Like, I think I want to get it. When the nurse came back in, I told her that I was okay with getting the epidural. And then by that point, it was very, very painful. My contractions were very painful, and I really cannot remember what time that was. I do believe that I labored a lot of the night without the epidural. I think I got the epidural in the daytime. So I do remember when they gave me the epidural, I kind of just like cried and let it out. Like, oh my gosh, like it was like an emotional thing because I was like, somebody's finally here to help me. Like, I saw it like that. Like I was just like afraid, and I felt like some type of comfort with the epidural. I ended up just laboring the rest of the day, the next day with the epidural. I ended up giving birth around 4 p.m. and you know, it was my first birth, so they do tend to last a lot longer. I was in labor for, I feel like, a very long time. And I also requested a mirror in front so that I can see the baby coming out, since I'm like, oh, I mean, I don't have an epidural. Might as well watch her come out. Like, I'm not feeling anything anyway. So eventually, after pushing and pushing, I could see my baby kind of coming out, and they put her on my chest, and yeah, the rest is history. I still consider that a very beautiful birth, and I was happy and on all, but I will say that I did feel really, really exhausted, like extremely exhausted and low energy, and it was just like a very hard night. That first night, like it was so hard. But like I said, overall I was still considered a beautiful birth. You know, I brought my first baby into the world. So now let's step into my second birth. I found that I was pregnant with my second baby about 2 years after. Once my first daughter was born, we completely changed like our entire lifestyle, our diet, everything. Like, no more chemicals in the house. We started eating all organic food. It didn't all happen in a day, but little by little we just converted. By the time my daughter was eating solids, like everything in her fridge was converting to organic. So by the time I was pregnant with my second baby, I was a completely different person. Of course, I wanted to do things differently this time, and I knew now, I understood the bigger picture about birth and natural birth and how it's really supposed to go, and how the births that we have in the hospital and can sometimes be traumatic for some people because it just goes completely against nature and completely against their bodies. And you know, you don't really have like the support of the hospital staff because they're just used to them it's just a job, you know, they're used to doing their thing. And I'm not like trying to put any nurses or doctors down, because all of the nurses I've dealt with, most of them except maybe one, at the hospitals with both of my births were lovely, amazing, sweet, and just really, really kind women. And so I'm not trying to put any of them down. It's just a different environment, and the way they do things in the hospital is just different. So with that being said, I knew now that I wanted to have a completely natural birth. I understood now that my body was made to give birth without an epidural, and that my body could do it, and that I was capable of it. So I knew that I wanted to do things differently this time. But I still didn't want anyone in the room besides my husband, like any family members, because although a lot of the women in my life had natural births, they still kind of saw these births as like painful and horrible and traumatic, and in the end it's like your mindset. It's really all about your mindset. We decided to hire a doula, and if you don't know what a doula is, it's basically a birth support person who is there for you throughout the whole labor and delivery process, and they do not like touch the baby. They don't deal with any of that, the delivery part, but they're just there for you, like just to support you. And so I thought that would be perfect for me, because this person was going to be there for me to help me achieve the birth that I wanted. And we had like the interview before we decided to, move forward with, the agreement that she was going to be our doula. We spoke and we talked about like my expectations and what I wanted out of this birth, and we just talked and got to know each other to see if we would be a good match, and we did find out that we are a really good match. So let's get to the part where I went into labor with my second baby. So I woke up one day, and that entire day I remember I started having contractions that were 10 minutes apart, and it was like very consistent all day, 10 minutes apart. And I remember that day I made plans with my sister and my daughter, my oldest daughter Jane, and we went to go have some lunch. I remember like going through contraction pains the entire time we're together and we're out, but it was like something that I could work through, because it was just like I just had to kind of like pause for like a minute, and then then I can move on with my life for the next 10 minutes and be fine. And then when it got to the nighttime, I went to bed, and I went to bed maybe like at 10:30 or 11, and I remember maybe like 10 minutes after I fell asleep, I felt a pop inside me, and I remember it kind of woke me up, and I remember thinking like, is this what I think it is? But I was like, no, I'm fine. Like I'm gonna go back to sleep. Like I was like so calm and confident, and I was just like, I'm okay. Like I'm gonna just stay asleep, because I was very tired and I was just trying to sleep. It got to the point where I woke up maybe thinking it was 30 minutes to an hour later, and ended up getting up. I don't know if I felt like I had to pee or if I was having a contraction. So I woke up, water gushed out of me. So it was literally like in the movies where the water just gushes out. It's like a lot of water. And I was like, what? And I was like really happy, honestly. I remember telling my husband like, my water broke, and then he was just like, what? And then so I told him I'm gonna go shower. But I was like, I was in a good mood. I was like really happy. And so I was like, this is happening. And by the way, this happened when my water broke, and that day that I went to labor, I was 40 weeks and 3 days. So I was a little bit over, but not as much as the first of pregnancy. And so back to my story. So I went to go shower, and just to see, like how I felt. And then I got out of the shower, and there was still water trickling down. And so it was getting stronger. I realized that the contractions were getting stronger. I had a birthing ball that my doula provided so that I could use it during labor, because we had an agreement that I was going to stay home and labor as long as possible at home. I was on the birthing ball after that, just trying to relax and breathe through it on my own. My husband was like getting ready, and they were getting stronger, and we were in communication with my doula and my mother-in-law, because she was going to come and take care of my older daughter while I went to the hospital. And then eventually we took off. I was laboring in the car, and I remember my husband had to put like something on the seat for the car, because my water kept coming out. I get to the hospital, and I feel like I'm really out of it. Like I remember it being like feeling like a dream. They bring out a wheelchair to get me upstairs, and my husband meanwhile was parking the car. And so I remember when we got to the triage center, I stood up, and I remember the chair was like so wet, like with amniotic fluid. I almost felt embarrassed. I was like, I'm so sorry. And he was kind of like shocked. And I remember thinking to myself, like, does this not happen often? Like, why is this like such a surprise to him? I don't know. It was a lot of water all over the chair, and like, you know, dripping on me. And then, you know, we got our room. Soon after, my doula showed up as well. Yeah, so I pretty much labored the whole night in the hospital room. This time I didn't lay down. I had hardly laid down. I walked back and forth in the room for so long. I just remember like pacing back and forth, and I remember walking to one end of the room because they're pretty big, stopping at the end of the room, and I would have a contraction. I was breathing through it, getting through it, and then I would walk back to the other side, and then I would have a contraction on that side too. You know, I just kept pacing back and forth. I kept moving my body. I took turns going on the birth ball and, you know, doing that. And you know how I mentioned in my first birth story that I felt like the bowel movements, but I just couldn't release them in the first birth. And I will say that I did not like go poop during my first birth, because I think you might think that would happen just because I wasn't able to go. So, but I didn't. Not that it's bad that if you don't or do, but I do think that it's interesting that I didn't if I felt like I should have gone. With this birth, I remember when I spoke to my doula, I told her that one thing that was very uncomfortable to me was the feeling that I had to go to the bathroom, but I couldn't go. This time we were like, okay, well, she told me, we're gonna try to make sure that you go to the bathroom so you can relieve that. Yeah, I kept going to the bathroom. It was like my body was cleaning itself out. So I was going to the bathroom pretty often. There was even one time where I was on the toilet and I had like a super duper strong contraction. Like, it was unbearable. I just remember being really strong and I couldn't get up, and it was just like, that was a really hard one. I did still have to get monitored once every hour for 15 minutes. So that kind of sucked, because I know it takes time, you know, like I'm laboring, I'm walking, and then I have to lay down for 15 minutes, and it's not fun. I don't want to be laying down. It's not the best position to be in. It doesn't feel like you're working with your body as well when you're just laying down. But you know, it was fine. It was an agreement, you know, that I knew I had to make giving birth at the hospital. Up to the point where after walking, I was on the birthing ball and I was like leaning over on the bed and, you know, swaying my hips. And then it was time to get checked, and then I was really, you know, it was my labor was very active at that time. And the lovely nurse didn't make me get in the bed. She said, don't worry, I can check you while you're here. And so she held the monitors for me, and she monitored me for 15 minutes. And usually they hook you up to the monitor, and they keep you there for 15 minutes. They walk away and then they come back, or they'll do like something else around the room. But she was so nice enough to, you know, hold the monitors in place while I labored. And for 15 minutes, she stayed there with me. You know, I remember being very quiet, but I remember being very thankful that she did that for me, because I didn't want to move from there. I didn't want to get up and lay down at that point. It was going to take me too much energy to do that. And during that whole time when she was monitoring me, like I said, I remember being quiet, and I remember kind of like I started dozing off, and then she left and I was still dozing off. And then my doula was like, your contractions are slowing down and you're kind of falling asleep, so maybe you should go get some rest, you know, on the bed. You should take advantage of this slowdown and get some rest. I was like, okay. So I laid down, and I'm glad I did, because I was able to gain some energy during that time, because they did slow down. And it's just amazing how well the body works when you work with it, because all these little things really made a difference. So I was able to get some sleep. And why do you think I was able to get some sleep? It was because my body knew it was going to be time to push soon, so it was going to give me a break, you know. So when I woke up, I remember I woke up and I was just like felt super duper nauseous, like I'm about to throw up. I knew, and I hadn't threw up at all throughout the entire labor, but I pointed at the, you know, that little pink bucket that they give you in case you need to throw up. So I pointed at it and I was like, I'm gonna throw up, and I was like, I need it. And so my doula passed it to me, and I threw up like a bunch in there, like it was just like blah. And then that was another way of my body emptying itself out and getting ready for, like, you know, the end. After that, it was the last stretch, and I can honestly say it was getting very hard at that point. I felt kind of miserable because I was just really exhausted, and I hate throwing up as well. So my OB, she was a midwife at the hospital. So she came in and she checked how far dilated I was. And then she said, okay, you're still so-and-so centimeters dilated. Honestly, I'm not big on keeping track on that. I don't remember. It's been almost 7 years since I gave birth, so I don't remember how far I was along at that point, but I knew I was far along. I just don't know how many centimeters far along. I was maybe like 7 or 8, I'm not sure. My midwife asked me, do you have any questions? And then I was like, how much longer do you think? And then she said, like an hour. And then I was like, no. Like in my head, I knew it was not an hour. I was like, there's no way, like I'm literally gonna push this, like I can feel it, like it's gonna happen soon. But I didn't tell her that. And then I remember my doula and my husband looked at each other because they had been there with me throughout the entire time. They knew that. They looked at each other and gave each other that look, like, no, like this is not gonna it's not gonna be that much longer. And literally, she walked away, the midwife. As soon as she left the room, I had to push. I was like, I'm gonna push, I have to push, and I'm gonna start pushing. It was just like a very, very strong urge to push, and you can't hold it back. Like, so I just started pushing without even anybody telling me it was okay to push. In hospitals, you kind of are guided to push. So I started pushing. My husband had to go run out and call her and say, like, she's pushing. She said she has to push. She ran back in, put on her gloves, checked me. She said, okay, Melissa, you're having this baby right now. And that was literally like less than a minute that she had just told me that it was going to be an hour longer. So that goes to show that it doesn't matter if you're 6 centimeters dilated. It doesn't mean that you're going to take another few hours before you're 10 centimeters. It can literally happen in like a minute or 5 minutes. Just in case that you've never heard of that, like that can really happen. It doesn't always have to take a long time. Of course, if it's your first birth, then yeah, it can take longer. I really do think working with your body helps, you know, for these things to progress in this way. I ended up pushing the baby out, and I ended up giving birth at 9 a.m. You can tell this labor was much shorter than the first one. I arrived at the hospital at maybe 3 a.m. and I gave birth at like 9 a.m. So that was only like 6 hours, opposed to my first birth, where I arrived at the hospital at like midnight, and then I gave birth the next day at 4 p.m. So it was many more hours with the first birth. It was a very beautiful birth, my second one as well, and I didn't request a mirror this time because you're more focused on just pushing out the baby. You don't really, well, at least I didn't care to see. I just wanted to push her out. What I can say about that experience after giving birth is that I felt so much more energy. I felt happier. I felt, it was crazy. Like I didn't really sleep the whole night, and I just remember feeling so much energy. Like I was so happy. I would look at my baby and I just wanted to stay awake because I was just so full of energy. And although I knew I should be sleeping, it was already nighttime and I still didn't sleep. I had my baby next to me. I had her in my arms. I just couldn't fall asleep. I was just so happy. You know, there was no chemicals to get in the way of those hormones. You know, because I wasn't given a Pitocin or an epidural. So those are like the major differences with, you know, the birth and how I felt after the birth. And I think what I can take away from both births is that I tried to stay positive through everything. You know, obviously if you want to have a natural birth in a hospital, you can kind of see how my mindset changed from the first birth to the second birth. So now I'm going to jump into a few tips that I can give you for having a natural birth in a hospital if that's what you want. If you don't want a natural birth or don't care for that, then that's okay. If you are looking to have a natural birth in a hospital, I'm going to share those tips now. And I'm going to kind of run through this a little bit quicker, but still give you all the information you need because I feel like this video is very long. So one of the first things I recommend is read and research. And you want to familiarize yourself with birth and the body and the whole biology of it, and really understand what your body is doing, what the baby's doing, and just understand that whole entire picture. And I have not read this book. It's called In a Maid's Guide to Childbirth. I have not personally read it, but I've heard great reviews, and from all the like natural birth gurus, people, they all recommend this book for women who are trying to understand natural birth. And I already understood natural birth and I didn't feel like I needed to read a whole book on it. I highly recommend that one if you want to familiarize yourself and really understand that whole process. Another thing is join a community that advocates and supports natural birth. So whether that's on Facebook, on Instagram, or finding a birth group that you can meet up with and talk to, or even just people or friends that you might know that have had natural births or understand or support it. And on Instagram, you can follow profiles that, you know, support natural birth and give tips and have positive things to say about it. You can get that daily dose of education when it comes to natural birth, so you can really, you know, get it in your mindset and understand it. And then of course on Facebook there are tons of groups where you can join, where there's communities in your area or in your state. The second tip I have for having a natural birth out of hospital is choosing the right hospital. And for me, I didn't really choose the right hospital. I kind of just went with whatever hospital I had, you know, gone through with my first birth. And so that's what I did. And I still asked a lot of questions, and you know, it seemed like they were okay with everything that I wanted. But if you are still deciding on a hospital or even deciding on a doctor, I suggest you ask all these questions and ask what their C-section rates are, ask if they support breastfeeding, if there's like lactation consultants in the hospital. Ask things like, am I able to move during labor? Do I have to be on a bed the entire time? Ask those questions and see what they tell you and what your doctor and how he or she feels about it. See, you know, what kind of vibes they give you when you're expressing to them what kind of birth you want to have. The next tip I have is create a birth plan. So creating a birth plan helps you put what you want, like what you visualize out of a birth, on paper, and it kind of makes it more real, and it kind of makes you like organize your thoughts and figure out what you want and how you want things to go, and it makes it like more real so that you can show it to your to the staff, to the nurses. And what I would recommend when it comes to a birth plan is keep it simple. Don't be too like nitty gritty about it. Like just make it one page, be kind at the end, like say thank you, like just be very kind, because you want the nurses to not be annoyed by your request. I wish it was different, but I do remember being very kind on it. I was careful about my words on my birth plan with my second birth. I think I still have a copy of that birth plan. If I do, I will link it below if you guys want to look into that. If not, I can put a template of a birth plan down below, or maybe like an example of one that similar to what mine was. Next tip I have is hire a doula. And I really think that this was the biggest thing that helped me have the natural birth in the hospital that I wanted, was having a doula who was going to support me, and she was going to be there for me and help me get what I want. If you are like tighter on money and you don't want to invest or spend so much on a doula, because a lot of insurances, they do not cover doulas. What I did was I called a doula that had very good reviews, but her price was very, very high, and she connected me with doulas who were still like very new, not much experience, and we're still like working on their certifications. And I ended up going with the one that I went with. She had never given birth herself, and she was still getting her certification done, so her pricing was very low, which is something that I was able to work with. It was like $500 to $600, which is still kind of like you know, a big chunk of money, but it's not as much as like, you know, a typical doula price, which was like over $1,000. I felt confident because I was like, I just need a woman who, you know, I can connect with and who can be there for me to support me. Although she hasn't had that much experience, I still felt really confident, because when we spoke and when we went through the whole interview process and we met, we connected very well, and she seemed to understand really what I wanted. So I knew that, like, you know, I just needed that support system that was going to understand natural birth and understand that natural birth is a good thing and was going to support me through it. What you can do is you know, see the community that comes behind the doula that you're considering. Check out their reviews, ask them, you know, who their community is. You can speak to people who have worked with them. The next step I have is take a birthing class. Do some research and find a birthing class that is in line with you. A lot of those options that you can find, like on Instagram, if you follow those pages that have to do with, you know, natural birth, there's a lot of people doing the birthing classes like on Zoom or like where you pay for the course, and that's definitely something I would probably do now if I felt like I needed that. So yeah, that might be a good option for you. If you guys know who Mama Natural is, I think she has a birthing class, so you guys can check out her site and just look into that and see if it's something that you would want to do. The next thing is mindset. Step into that mindset of understanding what you're going to do, understanding that it's okay, understanding that it's natural, that it's normal. I've been reading this book. It's called Feng Shui Mommy. I love this book. It goes through every trimester and it just gives you very good tips overall that support a healthy pregnancy. And I like the way that it's written. The author speaks very like approachable. She's like funny, and it's not too like serious and like textbook. It's more like a conversation. So I highly recommend this one. I've been enjoying reading that one. I'm almost done with it. I highly recommend that one. And there's like meditations in there. It talks about like hypnosis, affirmations, and all those kind of things to help you. Another thing is meditating and just, you know, taking that time to be with yourself and breathe, deep breathing. Those are all things that can really help you prepare. Affirmations, there's these affirmation cards that I think are pretty cool that you can like read every day, or you can just say them to yourself or Google search them and then just, you know, maybe write them down. Tell yourself, I can do this, I'm strong, my body was made for this, I'm healthy. Saying all these affirmations daily can really make your brain understand and accept that this is true. Another thing is work through your fears and anxieties and let them go. Like it's okay to have fears. It's okay to be nervous and scared about something that you've been kind of always told or you grew up thinking that was a scary or painful thing. It's okay to feel those fears and anxieties, but you kind of have to work through them, think about them, stop pushing them away, and then just like work through them and let them go and understand that it's just a fear and you can get past it. Don't let it control you. That book that I mentioned, the Feng Shui Mommy book, that one goes more into like actual things that you can do, and it kind of walks you through the steps to get through each single fear that you may have. The last tip that I have is physical. Like you want to make sure that you're trying to be healthy, you're eating well, you're moving your body. You know, those are all things that of course are going to support you and have the stamina and to give birth naturally. And just like eating healthy and having an overall healthier lifestyle, when you run into complications during pregnancy, it can be a little bit harder for you to have a natural birth. You can, you know, have a healthier pregnancy and avoid, you know, all these other things that the hospital might suggest for you. That is pretty much all of my tips. I hope that you took something out of it and my birth stories might have helped you as well. If there's any questions you have, please leave them below. You can also reach out to me on Instagram. I like to hear from you guys on my DMs as well. I hope that if you're pregnant, that your pregnancy is going well and that you have the best birth you can have. So thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you soon. Bye.